Hey darlings, welcome to the year-long wrap-up. It is the end of 2024 and I've read so many genres I did not expect to read. I found so many 5 stars I had no way of predicting, and I'm so excited to share my reading from across the year because we haven't been friends for a year yet, and that's wild. So let's settle in, grab some tea, and get to know the specifics. So I'm gonna start off with a winter book tag that I got from Larry Reads. You probably know who Larry Reads is. If you don't, go check her out. She inspired this whole channel. She's an amazing booktuber, feels like your bestie, and that is what we're aiming for here. Oh, and then the other thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add in some reread questions, and those are from Oh Hey It's Michaela, who is an author and a booktuber and an all-round inspiration. So again, go check her out if you want her. I will put their tags where they need to be. The first question, which books am I proud of reading this year? Let's find them. We have piles and piles of books here. I am super proud of reading Women Living Deliciously by Florence Given. It's a book on feminism. I've mentioned it a couple times now in videos, and it's kind of looking at internalized misogyny and patriarchy and how to overcome it and how to live for yourself deliciously. So I'm really proud of reading this book because it's frankly not a work of fiction. It's more kind of philosophy, social commentary, living intentionally, and we're all for those vibes. So I'm just really happy that I got to it and I got to explore ideas that are really truly important to me, but that I've never taken the time to learn about yet. So I'm happy to be taking a step in that direction with Women Living Deliciously by Florence Given. The other book I'm really proud of reading this year is Graveyard Shift by M.L. Rio. M.L. Rio is one of my favorite authors. She is the author of If We Were Villains, which is a really famous dark academia kind of book based around Shakespeare students. Now, Graveyard Shift by M.L. Rio is a novella. It's a horror novella which follows a group of people who find something mysterious in a graveyard and have to kind of work through the night to figure out what's going on before it all gets covered up. Now, they're all battling insomnia at different levels, and so you kind of see how that impacts them, twist their perception. And then there's also an almost like science fiction creepy element going on in the background with people having strange symptoms and that kind of vibe. Honestly, I was a bit nervous to pick up a novella by M.L. Rio because I enjoy their writing so much, but I don't usually enjoy novellas. However, she somehow, in the same way she does with If We Were Villains, she packs so much character into so few words that you genuinely feel like you know the characters, they have their own unique dialogue and mannerisms, and you know it's their point of view, which is so impressive to me, especially in a novella. So happy I stuck to my goal of reading everything by M.L. Rio. I think she has a new book coming out in a year or two, so of course we'll scoop that up and read it. Let's check our next question. What was, in contrast, what was the most disappointing books of the year? Now, I don't own one of these because I refuse. My most disappointing book of the year was Does It Hurt by H.D. Carlton. Now, if you know H.D. Carlton, you'll likely know her from The Cat and Mouse duet from Haunting and Hunting Adeline. Now, in those books, she wrote characters and kinks and stories that were emotionally aware and competent and fully aware of what they were writing. It was awesome. Does It Hurt is the bloody opposite. It's literally an abusive relationship. I mean, it's more complicated than that. Does It Hurt is a guy who's into sharks and a girl who's an identity thief because she has a traumatic past and she needs to survive, right? She steals his identity. He finds out about it. They get shipwrecked on an island. This is all revealed in the blurb, don't worry. And it's them kind of surviving with the inhabitants of the island. Now, in this book, the reason it bloody frustrated me is because there was essentially just an abusive relationship between the girl and the guy. And it was, the connection between them was romanticized, and it was kind of, it was presented as, well, she deserves it because she stole his identity. And although there were moments where she called him out and said, hey, just because this happened doesn't mean I deserve this, it didn't really stand up, and it like conflated with her trauma responses and her past. And so it's just, oh, it was done in such an unaware way that really bothered me. I literally DNF'd it. I got most of the way through and then I was just like, you know what, no, I don't have to finish this, because like the guy was just abusive. The guy was abusive. And even when they had kink scenes involving sharks, it wasn't clear whether they were doing that because they both wanted to and enjoyed it, or if she was just doing it because he enjoyed it, and that is not how you do kink. So everything about this story bloody frustrated me. And so it was a massive disappointment, especially because H.D. Carlton did such a good job with the cat and mouse duet. I was like, I know you can write better than this. And so it bothered me. The other disappointing book of the year is only half disappointing. It's Vow of Deception by Rena Kent. This is a mafia romance. I won't go too long about this because again I spoke about it in my last video, but it's a mafia romance between Winter and Adrian. And Winter is homeless. Adrian is a mafia boss. Adrian needs Winter to be his wife because she's the doppelganger, and kind of sets up a kidnapping scenario, and there's a thriller plot in the background of will she survive and what actually happened to his wife, and is there a death plot in the background. There's all these things going on. The thing that disappointed me about the book, because the plot keeps me coming back, I'm still reading it, I intend to finish the series because the plot, the mystery, the thriller element is immaculate. Rena Kent's really, really good at that. What I'm not buying is the romance, because Winter has been kidnapped, right? So any closeness, any softness that's building between Adrian and Winter is a bloody lie. It's just there because she needs to be safe, and it's a way of surviving. And so she doesn't have a choice in any of it. And even though there's not out and out SA, it kind of is, because again, she is a captive. She can't say no because then he might get angry, he might kill her, right? So even though things are happening as if she wants them to, the situation means consent is kind of void, and it just really doesn't do it for me at all. And then kink is kind of being explored in this, and like that seems to be enjoyable for the characters, but at the same time she's a captive. There's no consent here. There's no conversations around how to do this safely, or what are your limits, or yada yada. The rules that he makes keeps changing and changing and changing because again, he's her captor. So it's really bugging me that there's even a hint of a romantic connection between them when there's that dynamic going on. Not here for it. Not at all. So that is a really, really frustrating element of this book. As I say, I'm going to finish it because the thriller aspect is really interesting. And oh my goddess, the fact we get to see Jeremy when he's young. So in another book, God of Wrath by Rena Kent, the Legacy of God series, we see Jeremy grown up, and that's the whole reason I'm reading this series, this book, is because in Jeremy's book in Legacy of Gods, he mentions that his mum used to dissociate, that she was kind of a ghost sometimes when he was a kid, and I was like, oh, I need to know more about that. So that's why I'm here, and I'm going to finish it for Jeremy. But the romance is pissing me the fuck off, so that's disappointing. Let's move on to the next question, shall we? Because otherwise I'll rant for a while. So, an underdog book that completely took me off guard, that is the Marionettes series. I'm going to put it in a picture, and the author will be in the description below. The Marionette series is a kind of a romantasy series in a way, where you've got the Marionettes, who are an order of witches who protect the vampire court and the vampire queen, but basically the society is corrupt, and witches and humans and werewolves and yada are being killed indiscriminately. And then there's also a big plot of somebody trying to overthrow the whole society and start it from scratch. So there are like massive like world building plot points in this, but we're kind of following a main character who is a witch with some additional abilities, who's never quite lived up to the legacy of her parents, but is also, I have to summarise without spoiling things, also has some abilities that have to be hidden to keep her safe. And it's an underdog book for me because it's a fantasy series, and I don't really do fantasy because for me, fantasy plots all become the same in that there's a massive society, somebody's corrupt, there's a war at some point, and somebody needs overthrowing, right? To me, those are like really overarching repetitive plots in fantasy, so I get bored with it really fast. And I will admit that did happen in this series towards the end, more to do with my relationship with the fantasy genre rather than how the series was written, because it was written pretty well, pretty consistently. There's some really, really interesting world building. You even have like parallel worlds of magic happening. Later on in the series, you have like sub-communities of werewolves. There's so much going on in this series. It was really, really fun, and I didn't expect it, honestly. I went into it really drawn there because of the witches and the use of blood magic, and I got this recommendation from Bailey Reads. I'll put their tag somewhere because I'm sure I just got the name wrong, but she's given me quite a few good recommendations that I'm really, really enjoying, and this was one of hers, so I was like, fuck it, let's see what happens. And it was really good. It was a surprise, so that's awesome. A popular book that I read that didn't hit, I was late to the game, but this has to be Darling Venom for me. Darling Venom is a doctor romance, bit of an age gap romance that also deals with grief. It's given to you in the blurb that it deals with really, really heavy topics, trigger warnings for suicide and those kind of topics. It deals with that, and it deals with them really, really well. The thing that didn't hit for me was the romance between our main girl, who is works in publishing, and the doctor guy, who is the brother of the guy who committed. Their romance just didn't do it for me. I don't personally get the doctor thing. It just doesn't do it for me. Like, I can't get past the whole that just goes against professional ethics and boundaries. It just isn't attractive to me. I don't care that you're a doctor. I care that you're in a caring profession, but I don't care that you're a doctor. It does nothing for me. Also, he was incessantly grumpy. I don't know. I didn't much care for either of the characters. I cared about, like, the story as a whole was really interesting, and seeing how they cope was really interesting, and I did finish it. But, like, I didn't particularly care about anybody that deeply. And the twist at the end was kind of predictable to me. I'm not going to spoil it, but it was predictable. That may be because I've read some John Green books and it kind of gave that vibe to me. You know, that kind of vibe, if you know, you know. So yeah, that book didn't hit. So, unpopular opinion, I guess. A book that surprised me. I don't have it yet. It's on the way, but Lights Out by Novella Allen. I did not expect to love it. I got the rec from Larry Reed's. It's a stalker romance with a trauma nurse, Ali, and a adult entertainer, Josh, and they explore, like, kinks together. They sort out a criminal situation together. There's, like, suspense, there's comedy, but the banter between them, bloody amazing. The kink representation, amazing. Consent conversations, like, treating everybody as precious and making sure everybody's needs are met, very, very important. And also, at the very beginning, he does something stalkerish, and then on camera sees Ali's very understandably fearful response, and then checks his male privilege and is like, crap, I didn't think about that. I didn't mean to make her terrified. Holy crap, I need to make sure she feels safe. And that level of self-awareness is where we're fucking at. So this completely knocked it out of the park for me. I went into it expecting, like, a funny, witty, bantery, light-hearted, stalkerish romance. Nothing too serious. And instead, it ticked, like, all the emotional boxes, all the kink boxes. It had some, like, thriller and suspense aspects. It had, like, comedy throughout. It was, like, heartfelt and sweet and had, like, a non-traditional kind of ending in a way. It ticks all my boxes so thoroughly, and now it's going to be a little Bible that I throw at anyone I'm potentially dating, like, hey, this is what I want. This is what I want. Thank you. So I'm ordering 2 copies, one for my library and one to throw at people, respectfully. Another book that surprised me, I do have it here somewhere, there are many piles of books, is The God and the Gumaho by Sophie Kim. This is a genre of book that I've not explored before. It's kind of suburban fantasy, but with Korean folklore. And again, I mentioned fantasy usually doesn't hit for me, but this was fantasy folklore, so I don't know, it just hit different. This is like suburban urban fantasy. It's one or the other. Somebody correct me in the comments. Thank you. We have Kim Hanny and Sokka. Kim Hanny is a nine-tailed fox, and Sokka is the god of mischief, a trickster god, and they have to team up as a grumpy sunshine detective duo to save their city from a spirit that is trying to take over and recreate a dark world. So the stakes are very, very high. The banter is very, very witty. There's also, like, sweet slow burn, which, again, usually not a genre I enjoy, but it was done so well, like, because they were witty, and there was so much going on all the time, and there was so much Korean folklore in the background, but not in a way that was like a big block of text to teach you about stuff, in a way that was really well integrated into the story and, like, taught you about where these spirits lie and what their purpose is. And it was gorgeous. And again, the ending I would say is non-traditional. I'm not going to spoil it, I promise, but it's kind of open-ended in that you assume there's a happy ending, and I really, really love how that was done. I feel like it really honors the learning the characters went through and the growth the characters went through, and everything sweet in it is quite poignant, it's quite meaningful, and I adore it. So this is definitely one of my favorite reads of the year also, and it fully surprised me because it's veering on the fantasy genre, more of the folklore genre, and I do love a good, like, urban paranormal fantasy read, and I feel like this was, like, bang in the middle of those genres of, like, fantasy, paranormal, urban reads. So definitely surprised me, and it's so pretty as well. I'm so happy to have it in my library. My favourite book couple of the year, this is where I actually start remembering names. She's completely lying, I'm gonna have to look them up. Bear with me. Scarlett and Thatcher. Oh my goodness, I did remember. Okay, so my favourite book couple of the year is Scarlett and Thatcher in The Blood We Crave by Monty J. Now, this is a serial killer dark romance with a twist. So Scarlett is a stalker. She stalks Thatcher. Thatcher is a serial killer. We know this because we are following the Hollow Boys in this series, who all kind of are trying to survive Palm Springs. And there's a conspiracy trying to like take down the drug organization of the town that's like murdering girls and kidnapping girls. Scarlett and Thatcher are linked by a childhood trauma that they both survived. Thatcher turned to Scarlett and said, "You will be a ghost," and Scarlett complied and has been his ghost, stalking him this entire time. My girl. There's also the setting of the university in this, which is like a third character all themselves, that is written so atmospherically, with like snowy settings and winter settings and a gorgeous like old university. It's so beautiful. And then we have some like really empowering violent scenes, so I'll say. And we have cover-ups that are team building, let's go with that. But the relationship between Scarlett and Thatcher is exactly right for the characters. Like it allows Scarlett to step into herself and come to grips with all the different parts of herself and what's been born of the trauma she survived. And it allows Thatcher to realize that the way he was brought up doesn't fucking define him, isn't accurate about him. And although they both learn these things and grow as people, at the same time they step into their darkest desires, let's say. And so I'm not going to say they become good people, but they become honest people in each other's company. And there's just something about the way these two draw together, because it's not a dynamic where one person is saving the other, not that at all, but it's a dynamic where they can both be themselves fully, however dark and deliciously that manifests, and that's amazing. So I fully will be recommending this to anybody who loves murder romances, dark romances, stalker romances, serial killer romances, Gothic romances. Just read this book, it's so good. And then my favorite polycule of the year, because you know there's more than one way to do something. My favorite polycule of the year is in Twisted Heathens by J. Rose. Twisted Heathens is a romance that happens in an asylum that's also a fucked up experiment where everybody has to survive, everything goes to shit in so many ways, and then you also have extremely dark themes of like mental health representation, extreme symptoms, you have people living through trauma, you have people going through trauma because again it's survival, you have the really complicated relationships and dynamics between each of the people in the polycule, because again they are all in an insane asylum, they are all legally ill. Who knows if this insane asylum is the way that they heal? You'll have to read it and find out. But the stakes are really high, and in the first book you think the stakes are just them surviving, and then it turns out to be an even bigger massive fucking plot. It's amazing the way this series builds. There's 3 books in it, but let me see if I can find the names of everybody. Let's do this. So in Twisted Heathens, the polycule is made up of Brooklyn, Cade, Phoenix, Eli, Hudson. Everybody is so interesting, so unique, such different dynamics between everybody. Let me tell you all about it. So we've got Brooklyn, who has schizophrenia. We've got Phoenix, who I think is a representation of bipolar with whatever the stupid term is for a sex addiction. And then we have Cade, who has some form of OCD, I would say more like relationship OCD. So their interactions with each other, how they keep each other safe and have each other's backs is wild. How they get to know each other and their secrets are revealed, because everybody has a secret or multiple in this series, and everybody like has a different or multiple purposes in this polycule. And it's not like they're all just together all at once, but like if you read this series, the graveyard scene, yeah, I think about it daily. The graveyard scene. I cannot wait to reread the series. It's too fresh in my memory from earlier this year. So we've got Brooklyn, who has schizophrenia, and she has grown up with this in her entire life and comes to this insane asylum after she has committed a crime. That's all I will say. Brooklyn and Hudson have a sordid past. They have a trauma they both experienced that they went through, and they are at fucking odds. They are in conflict, they hate each other, or do they? Hudson I think has something along the lines of like antisocial personality disorder, something along those lines, if that's even still a thing. We're not going to talk about whether diagnoses are valid, but let's keep going. But I'm so glad I found it, and I think J. Rose may become a favourite author of mine. It depends on when I read her next series. But let's move on. My favourite main character of this year, Alex Stern, Galaxy Stern from Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is a dark academia book where Alex can see the dead, and she's been recruited by a secret society at, I want to say somewhere like Stanford or Yale, somewhere old like that, to investigate what's going on, because people have been going missing. Weird occurrences have been happening with the ghosts, who are usually so docile and not being so docile, and obviously things go wrong many times. But Alex is one of my favorite main characters of the year because she is badass. She is gritty. She is a survivor. She comes to this university as somebody from a lower class background, having survived seeing the dead her entire childhood, being kicked out of schools, being kicked out of her home, running away, being in like really rough crowds, coming to the university, having to learn how the secret societies operate in just a couple weeks to survive the world, right? So she is a survivor. She is a chameleon. She has a steel fucking core, and I respect her so much. She may remind me a little bit of me. But Alex is someone who I can't wait to see develop in terms of letting people in terms of learning more about what she's capable of, in terms of learning that everybody needs her. For example, there's this scene in Buffy, right, towards the last season, where she's having an argument with the council, where she's saying, hey, no, you need me, you will listen to me. I'm so excited for when Alex Stern has that talk with the people at the university. So yeah, I can't wait until Alex has that conversation, the I'm in charge because you need me conversation with Yale. Here for it, so excited for it. So we will see. And then the way she handles mysteries and knowledge and just adjusts and figures out what her angle is and how she's gonna succeed and what that looks like to her. Like, oh, mad respect for Alex Stern. I can't wait to read the second book. It is in my library. I'm currently rereading this one so I can be fully up to date, but I'm still so excited to read more about Alex Stern and see how she grows into her capabilities and gets done what she wants to get done, because she has friends to save and possibly the dead. Who knows? I don't know. Okay, moving on. My favorite new authors of the year. We have a potential, and then we have a thank you so much for existing. So the potential I don't have a physical copy of yet, but it's called 5 by Lily White. I may have already spoken about it in a previous video. Check that out if you'd like to. But 5 is an incredibly dark romance that deals with a girl who is being interviewed by a criminal psychologist because a crime has been committed, and then trying to figure out if she was part of it, if she did it, if she was in lieu with whoever did it, and what the hell went down. And in this interview, you learn about her background of being incredibly abused. You learn about her background of the cast of characters who contributed to this crime. You learn of a massive twist, like 2/3 of the way through, in fact 2 massive twists, right? And through this whole thing, there's the question of, is our main character, who I'll put her name up here, I'm terrible with names, but we're all about respecting women here, so I'm writing the name. The whole questions throughout this is like, is she a victim, or did she manipulate everybody around her to give her what she wants? Is she a mastermind, or is she playing the victim to get away with a crime that she was in cahoots with? Can anybody be trusted because of the way the therapist acts later in the book? It really questions like how victims of SA are perceived. And then we have like the question towards the end of, does the ends justify the means, because something more horrific happens towards the end. And then you have the question of like, is it worth it, right? Does anybody care if bad things happen to bad people? So there's so many questions that come up in this book, and it's up to you to get to the end and think about it. Like, I still think about this book. I'm gonna have to reread to like reconsider, because I'm like, I don't have answers for this. My answers change every day. So I love that this book has brought up all these questions for me. And I say it's incredibly dark. Please check your trigger warnings. Like, read this when you're in a good headspace, because it's really dark. So I'm really excited to see next year if Lily White, the author, is just a one-hit wonder for me, or if she is going to be a new favorite author. She has another book that I really want to read that is, I think, follows an assassin who killed somebody's dad, and now he's obsessed with the daughter of the dad he killed. I hope that made sense. So I'm really curious how like that dynamic would even work. And I haven't read an assassin book in a long time. So it's like something I'm excited to explore from Lily White, and we'll see if she stays a favourite author or if this was a one-hit wonder. So that's my maybe. Another favourite author of this year was Monty J. Let me find the beginning. Nope. The second book, The Truths We Burn, in the Hollow Boys series, is again another one of my favourite reads of the year. In this one, we have Rook, who is our pyromaniac, and Sage. There we go. So we have Rook and Sage in this one. In case you haven't gathered, Rook's the pyromaniac. Sage is the popular girl who got sent away from school for many a reason and comes back even more conniving and cunning, and figuring out how to make her own way in the world for her own reasons, rather than being beholden to the status and games of the social class she was born to. And so initially there's a hate relationship between them because of some beef that went down in an earlier book, and so their relationship is kind of enemies to lovers in a way. And it's so precious because Rook gets a space where he's safe and not around abusive people, and Sage gets a space where she can be genuinely herself and not this fake popular girl that she tends to be to keep her class, right? So I really have a thing for people who get to put their guard down and just be who they want to be. Like The Losers duet by Holly LaRoe. Similar reasons why I love that duet, that's the word, is that Jess gets to put her popular girl persona down and just be who she is in front of all the boys. And this gave me that vibe, but with fucking pyro tendencies. Loved it. And again, the conspiracy running throughout the whole series of who the fuck is in charge of Palm Springs continues, and that's just really, really fun. So Monty J has become a favourite author of mine. I'm really excited to reread some of these books in a couple of years when I don't remember them so vividly, or when I want a comfort read. I feel like The Truths We Burn will become a comfort read for me in the same way that The Losers duet is. We shall see. And then I'm really excited to reread The Blood We Crave, that duology, at some point, because it's just beautiful. I've started writing a song based on it, and I can't wait to release it next year. So we shall see what happens. On the flip side, an author that didn't work for me this year was Runix. You Can Come For Me. Yeah, it was Runix. I tried The Predator. I tried Gothicana. Not for me. And it's not even the third personness, although that was a jolt. It's something I could get used to. It's the writing style. I didn't care about any of the characters. I could already guess what was going on. I just had no attachment, and I can't really pinpoint what exactly didn't work for me with the writing style. And I also don't want to drag on an author, but it just didn't work for me. So that's an author that really didn't work for me, even though I tried, mainly because her covers are bloody gorgeous. The original Gothicana cover with like the spooky old house and the shadows. Oh, I wish it was still in print. But there we go. On the total flip side of that, we are going to talk about the happiest books I read this year and the books that made me the happiest. So for me, you may notice I read a lot of dark romance, or a lot of heavier topics, right? So the happiest book I read this year was When We Collided, which is a young adult coming of age kind of story with mental health representation. We have Jonah, who is dealing with grief and taking care of his whole family whilst also being a teenager. I think he's 15. And then we have Vivi, who is another teenager with bipolar, who's moved to a new town she's completely in love with, and their symptoms both kind of ramp up and up while they get into a relationship and support each other until things come to a head and things happen. And you kind of follow Vivi having quite I would say in our medicalized society, a progressive view of her bipolar, in the sense that she doesn't see it as a limitation but a way to be fully herself. And Jonah is kind of coming to terms with the idea that he has depression and like how that impacts his life and where it comes from, right? So that he looks after his family, that he's dealing with the grief of the loss that he experienced, that it's a lot of pressure for a 15-year-old. And so they kind of like both come to terms with what they're experiencing and explore like who they are as people at 15 in this cozy coastal town full of art and connections. And their secrets are kind of revealed through the plot as they get to know each other, as things come to light. And then it all comes to head with a big event towards the end where you learn a plot twist and you're like, oh my goddess, nobody saw that coming except maybe Vivi's mum. So you kind of see like the consequences of their actions, but even when the consequences happen at the end, it doesn't come from a place of, oh, well, of course, everybody's ill. You know, that's not the standpoint. It's that people are complicated and there are many, many ways to treat a condition, and that it's just about finding the right way that suits you. And people, they do what's best for themselves at the end of this book in such a sweet way, and I'm here for it. How can fictional 15-year-olds be more empathetic than like half of society? It's wild, but this book was completely uplifting. And I feel like if you're someone who experiences these mental health experiences, then it could be quite validating and just a really soft look at how these things impact your life and how you can live with them and how you can be fully yourself and learn through it, right? So When We Collided, it's kind of heavy topic-wise, but with that kind of YA writing, and to me, it was so fluffy. It was so fluffy and just a celebration of being yourself, really, at the end of it all, which was adorable. In a similar vein, I think, in terms of YA vibes, we have Every Heart a Doorway by Shannon Maguire, who is a wonderful author. Now, I'm going to tell you why this book made me the happiest, and then I'm going to tell you what it's about. So this book made me happy because if you've read Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman, right? Shannon Maguire wrote a book that has the same vibe, a world that is like ours, but has topsy-turvy elements where other dimensions exist, and kids who can go to other dimensions or did go to other dimensions and came back somehow, they are all sent to a kind of orphanage or like a boarding school, I think is a better word. And like some of the kids there are coming to terms with the fact they'll never go back. Some of the kids there are searching for their doorway forever. And then in this short book, there's also a murder plot of somebody is killed, and like the kids are trying to figure out who did it and who's most likely to have done it and why it was done and if they're all safe. And through it all, there's these discussions of like other dimensions and people who belong in this world and people who feel like they don't. And so like it all I can describe this as is it has the vibe of Neil Gaiman's Neverwhere. And I've never found another book with that kind of vibe where reality is a question and every possibility is an answer. And I adore that. Like, and speaking about the realities and validating children's experiences of other worlds, other selves, treating every reality as a possibility is just such a gorgeous experience. And I love that there are kind of no rules for reality in that, but it's grounded enough in a world we know where you can follow it and you know what's happening. And again, this is a novella, and yet I felt like I got to know every character in this. They each had a personality. I cared about all of them, and I genuinely want to collect the entire series. I think there's like 5 or 7 little books in it, and I want to experience them. I really love the vibe of Neil Gaiman's Neverwhere, and now Every Heart a Doorway by Shannon Maguire. So happy. I've been raving about it for weeks after I read it because this vibe is so rare for me to find, and so I'm so happy I did. The saddest book of the year, nobody will be surprised, The Five by Lily White again, because trauma on top of trauma. But if I am setting the rule in this video that if I mention a book I've already mentioned, I'm going to give you one that I haven't. So the other saddest book that I read this year was Bone Island by Nicole Fiorina. Bone Island is the story of Adora and Stone. Adora is trapped in the town of Weeping Hollow, which is a mystical town where magic is real, it's trapped in time, mystical things are happening, there's a curse murdering people in the town, and everybody's trying to survive. And then there's also subplots of people in the past, a love story happening in the past, and there's a subplot of like spirits haunting the town, there's a subplot of the Hollow Heathens and like their responsibility to the town to save it whilst also being pariahs. But this book focuses on Adora and Stone. Adora, you will learn in the blurb, lost her mum when she was young in a way. And so Adora's life is filled with grief. Adora's life is filled with responsibility to her family. Adora's life is filled with putting on a front to hide her darker thoughts and just being kind of pretty and agreeable. She's also got responsibilities to her coven. She's been betrothed to somebody she cares about, but not in that way. She's in love with Stone, you know? And so there's this element throughout of the, kind of the power of grief, wanting to succumb to the ocean and having this kind of forbidden romance with somebody who the coven would kill if they know about. So there's a lot of her putting on airs and graces and having to pretend to be someone she's not. and how she lives like that, and how you feel trapped in a glass bottle, especially when she's trapped in the town with Hollow, right? So Adora, poor Adora, is dealing with a lot, again with the core of steel, and with her own way of coping, which is quite mystical and lyrical, as Nicole Fiorena's writing is. Now, in contrast, we have Stone, who comes with his own backstory. All I'll say is he's been aware of Adora across time, and he's also incredibly withdrawn, incredibly cautious, incredibly wary, because he was hurt by somebody incredibly close to him when he was a child. And again, like the other Hollow Heathens, he was a pariah growing up in every single society he was a part of. But he gets wounded, and so Adora takes care of him, and their romance blossoms. This book is just beautiful, and it's so self-aware. Like, they both use each other for escapism, and they're both aware of it, but there's also this kind of deep connection that blossoms between them. And Nicole Fiorena's writing, as always, is fucking lyrical. Like, it makes me weep, it makes me cry in the best way. And like, if you want to explore grief and get lost in poetry and a romance that just defies rules, Adora and Stone. The saddest book of the year, though, because of all those things it deals with Stone's backstory and Adora's backstory and the backstory of the town and the backstory of the ghosts in the town, because you learn about two separate stories of the past, which again are also heartbreaking and also steeped in tragedy. Who knows if there's even a semblance of a community by the end of it, so please read it and find out and tell what you think, because I need other people to cry over this book the way that I have. I've read it twice this year. Twice. It is thick. I've read it twice this year. And it made me cry both times, multiple times, and it was worth it. I kind of already mentioned that already. The next question is the most frustrating book of the year. I feel like I covered that with the most disappointing book of the year, so we're just gonna skip that question. My favorite cover of the year. To those of you who know me, this will be no fucking surprise. I got a special edition of Dorian Gray, The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This is by Chilton Publishing. We have raised embossed flowers on the front of a red and gold and ivory shade. We have black backing to it. We have gold edged papers. We have paper that is glossy and smooth on the inside. It's not regular paper. It's some kind of glossy, smooth one. There's a gorgeous black ribbon, and I'm enjoying reading every single page. I've literally gotten at least 2 quotes from every single page of me reading so far. But this is my favorite cover of the year. It brings me absolute joy to touch and behold and read. I've shown everybody in my life. Everybody. I will so get it as a present for people. But yeah, this is my favorite cover of the year. Look, it's even reflective. It's reflective. Oh my goodness. Okay. Books I haven't stopped thinking about. I mentioned 5 by Lily White and all the ways it's taken over my brain. I mentioned The God and the Gumaho because, again, it just ended so sweetly and it made me curious about Korean folklore. The other book I'm going to mention is Hollow Heathens by Nicole Fiorina. Full disclosure, I've read this book 5 times since I got it, and I only got it 2 years ago. It's my favourite book of all time. It's my favourite book of all time, and therefore I haven't stopped thinking about it. I think about this book on a daily, weekly basis, which, as someone with ADHD, you should know is massive. So, what's it about? We have Julian and Fallon. Fallon moves back to town to take care of Benny, her ailing grandpa, and moves to Weeping Hollow, a town suspended in time that's covered in magic and spirits and a curse that takes people's lives. Enter Julian, one of the Hollow Heathens, one of the masked men who are cursed in the town. And it kind of follows them trying to break the curse, trying to learn about the past of the curse, the past of the coven, trying to learn about the past of Fallon and her late mother and her special kind of witchery. And it's all about not letting other people's opinions define you, not letting other people's stories of you define you. And this is also about knowing your happiness and choosing it. So Fallon and Julian fight for each other. That would be a spoiler. They go through a lot for each other. Like, their love is unquestionable, and I adore everything about this story. If it had kink in there, it would be my ideal romance, but here we are. This is the other book I will send any of my romantic partners to be like, just read it. I will send this book to any significant person in my life because everybody should read it. But again, it's gorgeous. It makes me cry, it makes me smile, it makes me laugh. We have Freddie in the Morning, one of my favorite characters, who is a radio host who like greets you in the morning, speaks to you directly in the second book, Bone Island, to say, hey, we've noticed you around town, yada yada, and really just kind of pulls you in. And it's adorable. It gives Gilmore Girls vibes, it gives Wednesday vibes with the spooky. And if you're a hopeless romantic, like, this is the book for you. Like, it's got Frankenstein vibes. Oh, it's so good. So just please read Hollow Heathens and tell me what you think. An unpopular book I love would be Twisted Heathens by J. Rose. Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't know if this book is unpopular or just unknown. I don't see it talked about very much on Book Talk. I don't see it shared much on social media. So if you love it, please share it. Like, pop down below what you love about it. I would really love to know if like it's just not popular on my social media feeds or if it's genuinely like not very well known. But yeah, so I'm gonna pop that down as an unpopular book I love. Another unpopular book I love, which again, it may not be unpopular, it may just be not known on my social media feeds, but it's Kid by Jessie Hall. Jessie Hall's more famous book is Hawk, right? I haven't read that. I may one day, who knows. But Kid is one of my favorite books on planet, definitely in my top 5. And it follows Kid and Hannah. So Kid is a bit down on his luck. He's moved to a sleepy town and is rooming with Hawk and I think it's Joe to kind of try and get his life on track, try and put down drugs, try and just get his act together and figure out if he still wants to be alive. And then we have Hannah, who is running from everybody. She's like a surfer and a party girl and so deep and philosophical, and she kind of uses that to keep people apart from her by asking deep questions and separating herself. And she is fascinated, well, seems to be fascinated with death, or maybe saving people, who knows. Now, as they get to know each other, you learn where Kid's motivations come from, you learn where Hannah's motivations come from, you see them connect in ways that are so them that like it wouldn't work for another couple and may even seem odd, but I love it. Like, they're both quirky, odd people in that way, and like they're very different but then complementary. And I don't know, the way these guys connect just speaks to me. Like, yes, they have deep ass conversations, but it's the way that Kid disarms Jana and all her mysticism and philosophical questions and running away that keeps you at arm's length. And it's the way that Johanna looks at Kid and sees past his happy-go-lucky jokester side, which he shows the world, into this person with potential, which is gorgeous. And then they kind of like go on, honestly, a bit of a journey together whilst they try and kind of pull away at different points. And it's really sweet. It's super duper character driven. I think there are events that happen in terms of parties and safety and subplots of thievery and criminal stuff and like job security. There is stuff that happens, but it is really, really largely character driven. Like, I love this book because I adore these fucking characters and how they connect so much. So if you haven't heard of Kid, read it. Please, I beg. I will so be happy to talk to anybody in the comments to say, hey, this is why you should read it. If you have read it, tell me what you think, because it may just be not on my social media feeds, but like, I would love to see it in more places. So Kid. One popular booktuber I follow, I don't remember who, Larry? Hopefully Larry said that she might read this, and if she does, oh my god, so many people will buddy read with her, and I'm so happy that this book will get more known. So let's all vote for Larry. In fact, everybody tag Larry below and say, hey, read Kid by Jessie Hall, thank you. That would be amazing. But let's move on before I talk about this book forever. A book I thought I'd love but didn't, I actually no longer own. I've given it away to a friend because I thought they'd enjoy it more. It's The Fabric of Our Souls. I'll put the author somewhere because I don't remember it right now. But I thought I'd love it because it follows somebody who's been sent to a recovery centre after they try and unalive themselves, and they meet someone who feels nothing and therefore is incredibly angry at them for trying to unalive themselves because she feels so deeply and he feels nothing, and he's like, how dare you try and unalive yourself when you feel everything, and I wish I could feel everything, you know? And then there's kind of a murder mystery plot hanging on in the background where it turns out one of the characters had been mistreated by a previous resident, and there's a whole subplot there of like, are they safe? Is he going to come back? Is there a murderer in their midst? Who knows? And then you've kind of got like a throuple kind of situation going on as well. And there is a bit of will they, won't they in a way. Honestly, I so wish this book was a polyamorous one. It was so close. It so could have been, but it wasn't for whatever reason. That's the author's choice. But it could have been. And I think it would have been really sweet. But also the way this ends, oh my goddess, it rips your heart out. Just take tissues with you when you read this book, okay? Obviously, it's heavy. Obviously, there are trigger warnings, massive mental health triggers, a bit of gore triggers, I would say. And then the ending. I haven't recovered. So even though I have many thoughts and emotions in this book, I felt like I didn't love it. Like, I was interested in what was going on and curious, but I mostly read it because I wanted to love it by the end, and I was hoping that if I read the whole thing, I would fall in love with the characters. But I didn't. It was a good story. It was well written. I did enjoy it, but I didn't super care about the characters, and I felt like it didn't go deep enough into the mental health. Like, it was very surface level to me. That might be because of the types of books I read. It might be just because I didn't mesh with the writing style potentially, but it didn't deep dive into the mental health side of things as much as I wanted it to. Maybe it was too short. Who knows? But for all those reasons, I didn't love it. I liked it a lot, but I didn't love it, you know? A book with the most unique concept I've read this year. Okay, so unfortunately I'm going to break my own rule. Ooh, okay, I'm not. Well, I am. I'm going to break my own rule, and then I'm going to cheat a little bit. So I'm going to say the most unique concept I read this year was Vow of Deception, in the sense that, yes, there's a mafia marriage of convenience, but also she's the doppelganger of his dead wife, and she has to pretend to be his dead wife to keep everybody alive, to keep Adrian alive, to keep Winter alive, to keep Jeremy alive, to keep his old garden alive, right? And like the fact that there's the mystery thriller of what actually happened to his wife. Is she going to survive? Is there a whole subplot of like her being brainwashed to take down Adrian and his gang? Like, to me, that's all very unique stuff. That maybe because I don't read much mafia, and if you know similar kind of vibes, pop them below. But to me, this was a really, really unique premise that I've not come across before. Obviously, Marriage Convenience is done and dusted, but all of the other thriller stuff I'd not come across before. So it's keeping me hooked, and I think I'm going to get through like all 3 books, so that's really, really cool. And then the other one is Every Heart a Doorway that I just went through. Again, so hard for me to come across well-written, whimsical, playful, parallel universe-y, valid realities, like realities being validated kind of books. So that was really fun. And then The Cheating is a book I haven't technically read yet, but I will. That has a really unique premise to me, which is The Madhouse by Liza James. Liza James writes femme romance, woman of women. I don't know the term, there are many, but female romances, there we go, with like religious recovery elements. So as far as I'm aware, The Madhouse follows 2 stepsisters who grow up in an incredibly religious, abusive household. One of them escapes, one of them doesn't escape till later in life, and she, one of the foster sisters, takes on her younger sister as a, like, ward, I think, and that sister, who is in the abusive environment for a lot longer, has some kind of darkness inside her, and she's trying to struggle through whether or not to let that darkness win. I don't know what that means. I'm hella curious though. And then I think, knowing Liza James, there's going to be some kind of forbidden romance between the 2 stepsisters, because Liza James is amazing at writing female romances, and I just predict that's what's going to happen. So this has, like, I don't really read stuff with religious undertones, because been through it, don't need a repeat, you know? But Liza writes such good female scenes. Like, I still think of Ruby and Aurora from Vibe or Hush Hush, right? I still think of them. And I'm not ready to reread those books yet. I remember them too vividly, but I can't wait to one day. And so I'm intensely curious to know how the Madhouse goes. And it's really unique premise in the sense that we've got somebody who's splitting from reality potentially, and we've got like stepsister guardianship and like that whole recovery, forgiveness, like chaos and restoration relationship that goes on there. I'm so curious. And I personally, I don't think I've read a step sibling romance before, so that's new to me, at least. But with all the kind of religious elements and the split realities and the possible murder, because there are axes on the cover, sounds pretty unique to me. So I'm very, very curious. Books I read this year that I will reread. You may have heard in a previous video about My Throat an Open Grave. That book ripped my heart out. It was fucking phenomenal. And again, it was a novella. What is it with me and reading novellas this year? Anyway, My Throat an Open Grave followed somebody whose sibling got stolen into the woods, and she is sent by her community to go into the woods as a, how old is she? I want to say 16-year-old girl, to go and find the brother and rescue him and make a bargain with the guy in the woods and say, hey, give me my brother back, assuming the bargain will be her life, right? And she lives in a religious community. This book has cultish vibes. This book does a deep dive on mental health and how we kind of create our own prisons with our assumptions, and how the people who are the bad guys aren't the bad guys and people who are the good guys aren't the good guys, and like how perception completely distorts reality, and how her community is incredibly harmful. And oh my god, I want to go into details so bad, but it will spoil. So My Throat Open Grave, just, I can't wait to reread it. And especially with the ending, it was so sweet. It was so open-ended, but it was so sweet. It was exactly what was needed, and I adored it. So I'm very, very happy with that. A book I will reread, because it's, again, one of my top 5s, is Ominous by K.V. Rose. This follows Eli and Eden. Eli is a psychopath. Eden is someone with a mental health disorder I won't disclose because it's a spoiler, but it kind of follows them being enraptured by each other, absolutely obsessed, and how they spend time together and their relationship and the risks they take escalate and escalate and escalate until it all comes to a head. There are 2 books in this series. The writing is lyrical as fuck, and I'm currently annotating this copy. Oh, it's gorgeous. It's a dream. I can't wait to keep rereading and keep annotating. This is like, whenever I pick this book up, it's a gift to myself. It's me time. It's a gift to myself. I absolutely adore this book. And I would throw it at people, but that feels too revealing. So, maybe. And then another book that I want to reread this year is God of Wrath by Rena Kent. This follows Jeremy and Cecily. Jeremy is a mafia prince. Cecily is someone from a high society family, and they start a enemies to lovers kind of hatey-ish kind of connection. And like, they both have their own mental health issues. I'm noticing a theme here. And they explore, I think, fear kink, chasing kink, one or the other. I don't know. I'm curious if it will hold up in the reread. Yeah, the main reason I'm curious about this one is because I want to know if after reading The Parents, I better understand Jeremy as a character. Because I did get a bit frustrated with him sometimes. And so I want to know if after reading his parents' books, I will get it more. And I'd be excited to see if rereading The Renaverse holds up, because I've not reread a Renaverse book before. A book I wish I got through this year, The Madhouse by Liza James. I sincerely wish I had read this already. I'm so insanely curious. So I guess that might be my birthday present coming up in February. Who knows? And then I sincerely wish I got through Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Now, I did get halfway through this book. It is a look at, I wish it had a blurb, Indigenous wisdom, scientific knowledge, and the teaching of plants. And it really pulls together all those things. It pulls together Indigenous stories. It pulls together the teaching of plants in what we can learn from them, in what they teach us, in how we view the natural world, like in a capitalist society that's really, really disconnected. And it looks at what we can learn from the world around us and how we can interact with it in a way that sees it as living and sentient and alive. And so I've already kind of got through half of it and learned, I feel like I have a deeper understanding of animism and how capitalist Western language really objectifies the living world. And that never made sense to me. I always felt really disconnected from that kind of language. It never expressed what I wanted to express. And then learning how, for example, Indigenous folk speak about trees as tree people, or lakes as, instead of lakes, like lake spirits. Do you know what I mean? Like sentient living creatures that are living alongside us, not in front of us, you know? And so I'm really excited to continue this. I might go back to listening to it. I may go back to studying it, probably both, across the next year. But yeah, Braiding Sweetgrass, I really, really hope I get through it. Thoughts on my reading journey across the year are that I read way more novellas than I expected, are that I feel like I've read a real range of, well, dark romances, mainly this year. But I'm also glad that I got back to some of my favourite books. I got back to The Picture of Dorian Gray, I got back to Ominous, I got back to The Weeping Hollow World. I still check Nicole Fiona's website every single day to see if she has released their next book. We will get there. And I also got to explore new genres of feminism and social commentary and a bit of, I don't know, suburban fantasy, I guess, like with the Korean folklore. And do you know what I mean? Like, there was a real mix. I feel like I really grew as a reader this year. And I also was introduced to the wonders of audiobooks. So that's going to really help me in consuming more informational non-fiction kind of philosophy books, feminist books, witchcraft books, hopefully. And we'll go from there. So I'm honestly pretty happy with my reading journey. I'm really curious what will happen next year. In 2025, I want to prioritize reading, well, listening to audiobooks of philosophy and witchcraft. Friends got me some gorgeous books on witchcraft for Yule, just gone. And so I'm gonna find the audiobook and read alongside while listening, and hopefully that will help me focus for more than 5 pages. We shall see. And then I also want to find more books like Lights Out with emotionally competent characters who question the patriarchy, learn as they go, and listen and value and cherish the women around them, and like build up each other's strengths. I want to find more books of that caliber. I really want to read the rest of the Every Heart a Doorway series because I crave that vibe of Neil Gaiman-esque, is reality, are there multiple realities kind of vibes with these wholesome stories. Well, wholesome-ish, with like gory adult undertones, but yeah, very like a mixing of adult and child concepts and what is reality, and maybe there's more than what we could ever perceive. I love that. So that is everything. I want to send out a big thank you to Oh Hey, It's Michaela and Larry Reeds for inspiring this whole video and for inspiring me to create a space where I can share my reading from across the year. Hopefully we've gotten to know each other a little bit better. Hopefully I've shared some light on some books that I really hope get more visibility, and I'm really excited to keep reading it across the next year, keep exploring genres, and get my teeth into more and more dark romance. So please pop below if there are any books that are like the ones I've mentioned that you would love for me to read. Pop below if I've mentioned some of your favorites and you really loved it, and tell me what you loved. I loved hearing about what people love about books. It's so much fun, and I will see you in the next video.